They say it's just business, until the bottom falls out. You've watched the numbers spiral. You've taken the calls. A partner backs out. A campaign flops. The market turns cold. Suddenly, the empire you've built starts to look like sand. And you're left asking the question no spreadsheet prepares you for. What now? Now picture this. Not a resignation letter, not a tweet storm, but a stillness. A founder who doesn't flinch. A voice in the chaos that doesn't rise, but steadies. Not because the storm isn't real, but because he's not built on what's breaking. That's the wealth the Stoics cared about. The kind you can't lose in a downturn. The kind no investor can revoke. Because when everything collapses, the only assets you truly own are internal. In 2008, CEOs cried in parking lots. Traders walked away from skyscrapers with cardboard boxes. Some jumped. The crisis was financial, but the wreckage went deeper. Identity was tied to capital. Confidence was tied to cash flow. When the money disappeared, so did the self. Seneca saw this 2,000 years ago. He wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." That wasn't poverty shaming. That was diagnostic. He knew that the pursuit of wealth without inner architecture leads to spiritual insolvency. And he had skin in the game. Seneca was one of the richest men in Rome. He invested, he speculated, but when his fortune was threatened, he reminded himself, fortune may give, but virtue is the only yield that compounds forever. That's the lesson modern founders skip, until it's too late. Imagine losing 80% of your net worth overnight and feeling intact. The Stoic doesn't avoid the crash. He prepares for it, not with fear, but with training. He builds a portfolio inside, courage for when clients vanish, reason for when the board panics, temperance when survival tempts compromise. These are not abstractions, they're disciplines. And the payoff isn't theoretical. Because when competitors are hemorrhaging self-control, the Stoic makes clean cuts, not desperate ones. When co-founders are blaming, posturing, spinning, he tells the truth. When investors call in fear, he answers in clarity. Why? Because his operating system isn't the stock price. It's the self. When Elon Musk watched Tesla stock collapse in 2022, he said he didn't care. Whether or not that's true is irrelevant. The point is, he understood something crucial. If your value rises and falls with valuation, you're not leading. You're reacting. That's what the Stoics warned about. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Don't value what has happened to you more than what you do with it." The crash is not the crisis. The self is. Markets are mirrors. They reveal, they reflect, but they do not define. And that's why Stoicism isn't soft. It's surgical. It removes the tumor of ego before the system fails. So what do you keep when you've lost the leverage? You keep your clarity. When others scramble for cover, you step forward, not with noise, not with spin, but with orientation. You've rehearsed loss, not morbidly, but soberly. You've imagined ruin, not to attract it, but to inoculate yourself. You keep your restraint, because in crisis, excess becomes poison. You don't overshare, you don't overpromise, you don't flail, you respond, not to optics, but to principle. And above all, you keep your dignity. That invisible posture that tells your team, your board, your family, this storm is real, but I am not drowning. Not because you're superhuman, but because you've practiced detachment. Seneca lost friends, status, and eventually his life. But he didn't lose composure. He wrote his final words as if penning a memo, not a eulogy. That wasn't performance, that was preparation. The Stoic doesn't fear bankruptcy, he fears cowardice. In every founder's story, there's a chapter where everything goes dark. Cash dries up, the press turns, friends disappear. This is where most lose their edge. They confuse visibility for worth. But the Stoic knows, silence is when the work gets real. And not just the work of salvaging the business, but salvaging the self. This is the paradox. Stoicism doesn't make you immune to loss. It makes you immune to self-abandonment. While others mortgage their values to buy time, you stand on principle, even if that costs more in the short term. Because the Stoic's wealth isn't liquid, it's stored in action. The market will rebound, or it won't. But the person who weathered it, honestly, calmly, without retreating into fantasy or blame, becomes more than a survivor. They become a reference point. People remember who cracked, who sold out, who turned cold, and they remember who stood up, eyes clear, with nothing to prove. This is the quiet ROI of character. It doesn't show up in quarter one, but it echoes in who picks up your calls in quarter four. That's the wealth you keep when markets crash. You can't fake this. You can fake optimism. You can fake charisma. But you cannot fake clarity under pressure, and you don't get clarity by reading another founder memoir. You get it by training, by remembering death, by journaling through your fears, by running scenarios in silence, so that when the real thing hits, your hands are steady. This isn't about branding. This is about backbone. Because the worst thing that can happen in a crash is not that you lose your business. It's that you lose yourself in the process. And the rare founder, the one who walks out of wreckage not bitter, not broken, but clean, he doesn't just rebuild faster. He builds better.